There is a worldwide travel alert through February on the busiest travel day of the year. Holiday season is approaching, shopping Black Friday just a couple days away, and Bedlam approaches this weekend. I'm Dave Morris here in the Oklahoman's video studio to preview some of the headlines that made the big stories this week and to look at some of the stories that will be making headlines in upcoming editions. To do so, I am joined by Phil O'Connor, Don Mecoy, and on the phone, Berry Tramel. Gentlemen, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I see we have various family members in the Oklahoman today. It is that time of the year as we approach the holidays. It's kind of a chance to take the foot off the pedal and enjoy some of the holiday festivities. Look forward to catching up with family and friends tomorrow and perhaps to have a very good meal. At least that's what I'm looking forward to. Phil, I'm going to start with you. One of the stories we have coming up deals with people helping others over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, volunteers.
Right. Well, we wanted to take a deeper look at the people who really help make our nonprofit world here sort of run, and it's your friends and neighbors who volunteer. And so, one of the things that we realize is that there are a lot of needs in Oklahoma, and a lot of people that can use help, and a lot of organizations that can use help. And so what we try to do is go out and talk to people who do volunteer and try to get a feel from them about what that does for them, what it means to them, why they do it, and the satisfaction that they gain from it. So it's been a real uplifting sort of project for us, and one that's really been fun to do. And in addition to that, Matt Patterson, who was the main writer on these stories, we sent him to Mansville, Oklahoma, which is a town that's...
Now, where is Mansville, Oklahoma? I know Barry on the phone knows exactly where that is, but I'm not sure I know where
Go
it is.
ahead, Barry, where is it? It's down there in Johnston County, right?
I can't place it. I'm not sure they got a high school, so I'm lost.
Yeah, I don't think they do have a high school. It merged 40 years ago. It consolidated with a neighboring high school. So you're right. He's right. There is no high school.
If it doesn't have like a high school football team or basketball, or has never been threatened by a tornado so that we would have seen it on a weather map at some point, I'm not sure I've heard of this.
Right. So it's a small town, and like a lot of small towns in Oklahoma, it struggles, and it has a lot of issues, economic issues, social issues. And yet, like a lot of small towns, or almost every small town, there is a dedicated core of people who work relentlessly and tirelessly to try and improve the quality of life for the people who live there. So we wanted to go down and profile a town and what the people there mean, what it means to them to volunteer and how crucial it is for them.
So when was Matt there?
Just probably 2 weeks ago.
So he spent some time there, got that slice of life, spoke to some volunteers.
Absolutely.
I was this morning over at the Homeless Alliance. Dave Cathy's been doing a Turning the Table on Hunger series, various local chefs helping out with the West Town shelter there. I spoke with Delbert Briggs. He's the assistant chef behind the counter. The funny story was I walked in and a couple of people who work there recognized me and they said, "I thought you'd be shorter." I'm not
at
sure
least
what
they
that
didn't
means.
say I thought you'd be thinner.
Yeah, well, and I certainly won't be thinner after this weekend. However, Delbert told me that today, tomorrow, 300 meals served at lunch. There are a lot of, as you alluded to, charities and operations doing good work in this community.
Absolutely. And one of the things that all the organizations that we talk to stress is that the holidays, during this time period, people are more apt to volunteer. This is not a time when they're in desperate need of volunteers. They're in need of volunteers other times of the year when people maybe aren't thinking about not in the holiday spirit that sort of has them focusing on others. But yeah, in the end, it's a real uplifting story. We talked to 25 different people from all walks of life to try and get from them, like I said, what they gain from it, what it means to them. And I think it's a really uplifting package. So
this will be in Thursday's editions of the Oklahoman.
Indeed, Thanksgiving
Which
Day.
will be a large edition of the Oklahoman. Don, I'll bring it over to you as we get into some of the holiday things in Black Friday. It's a big time of year for a lot of retailers, both local and national, to really kind of make their year, right?
That's right. They always look to the holiday season to make a big chunk of their revenue. And this year, like it seems like almost every year, we're seeing stories about retailers being nervous about the holiday shopping season. But every year, it seems like the consumers show up with their pocketbooks and their credit cards, and that seems to be the case this year. I was just chatting with Jennifer Palmer, who's going to cover some of the shopping for us tomorrow, because Black Friday has kind of segued into Black Thursday as a lot of stores open on Thanksgiving Day. And we were talking about how maybe Black Friday is kind of jumping the shark, has jumped the shark a little bit, because with the online availability of deals, with the fact that Friday has become Thursday, and then you have Cyber Monday and Small Business Saturday.
And then there's Giving Tuesday, as I learned this weekend.
And all of these things have kind of taken the focus a little bit off that one day of the year that we're supposed to be manically shopping. There's still going to be big crowds in Oklahoma City at the malls and at the major retailers. We have a story coming up where we also look at, if you like to shop local, there's a lot of great opportunities to do that as well. There's pop-up shops in Midtown, at the Myriad Gardens, Leadership Square has an event, and this is where you can find things like local craftsmen and shop owners who are offering unique kind of gifts. I mean, if you need an Xbox, clearly you're going to go to a major retailer, but if you want something special, inexpensive, handmade, you should go to a local retailer. We also have, you know, for Small Business Saturday, there's an event in Deep Deuce. There's also a bunch of retailers down in Stockyard City who will be having events where they'll have all kinds of drawings and gifts and Santa and different things to draw people in. Other places that you can go to local retailers and make your purchases.
You mentioned Leadership Square, and that's kind of interesting that they have that many local businesses willing to participate in an event like that. They have a lot of booths planned for Leadership Square, the winter shops, and then just right around the corner over in Midtown at the pop-up shops. I know we spoke with Allison Barta Bailey, I believe, as well. I think that was a story Brianna's also working on.
Right, that'll be in tomorrow's paper.
Very good, very good. Barry, I'm going to bring you in at this point because you are an expert on this matter of Black Friday shopping, correct?
Well, actually, I'm not a primary source, but I consider myself a pretty good reporter because I've lived for about 35 years with a group that is fairly militant about it. So, and this is a big year because my 9-year-old granddaughter makes her debut. She's been welcomed into the club. She gets to go Black Friday shopping this year, so it's sort of like a bar mitzvah, if you will, for us.
A rite of passage in the Tramel family.
So does Trish go Black Friday shopping traditionally?
Oh, Trish the Dish is, I consider it a good day when she makes it, when she leaves after sunrise and makes it home before sundown, but there hasn't been too many of those. I mean, she's a dawn to dusk Black Friday shopper. My daughter the same way. I've been blessed. I've never had to go. Never been Black Friday shopping, and with the good Lord's grace, I never will.
Phil brought up a good question before we went live here. What would it take to get you to do some Black Friday shopping?
It would have to be trip related. Have to be trip related. I would not go to a store. I'm a little bit like the Grinch. I've discovered that Christmas doesn't come from a store. So I would, if it comes down to a free flat screen, or wait one day and go write them a check for the flat screen, I'll wait the one day and write the check.
Phil, Don, you guys ever done the Black Friday shopping? Will you be doing Black Friday shopping
I
this
did
week?
it once.
Yes?
I stood in line at a Best Buy.
Did you camp out?
I got there well before sunrise. I don't know what time it was, the middle of the night. I was too far back in line to get what I wanted, and I left disappointed, and I've never gone back. Now, it's interesting if you look at the numbers, though. You know, tons of people show up, get in line, but the numbers say the busiest time on Black Friday is in the mid-afternoon, that there'll be more people at the stores between 2 and 4 o'clock. Now, they won't have to line up, but that's when the most people will be. And it's not the busiest shopping day of the year. The last Saturday before Christmas is actually the busiest shopping day of the year, unless you run a dollar store. If you run a dollar store, your busiest day is Christmas Eve, because the people who are truly desperate,
the last minute,
who run into the dollar store or the 7-Eleven.
This guy right here.
And we've talked about doing a story about that, although I'm sure these people wouldn't want to talk to us because, one, they're embarrassed, and two, they are in a gigantic hurry because...
well, yeah, I mean, they're literally on the clock at that point. Phil, have you done any Black Friday shopping?
I would never, ever, ever do that.
And Robin?
No.
No.
No. Haven't you seen the video? People get killed in those things.
They do not get killed.
That hadn't happened for a while.
Okay. For a while.
Barry, you mentioned trip related. It is the holiday season. We spoke with Karen Carney from Will Rogers World Airport earlier this week about the travel, and she offered some tips and some advice for people who are traveling You know, plan early. Don't book your flights too close together. Make sure you have enough time to catch your next flight. You travel an awful lot, Barry, covering sports. Any travel tips that you typically kind of live with when you're heading to the airport or when you're at the airport?
Oh, when you're dealing with it, one thing is be thankful you live in Oklahoma City or Oklahoma, because flying out of Oklahoma City is just a pleasant experience compared to a lot of places. So my tip is don't presume that the airport you're flying home out of is going to be the same as flying out of Oklahoma City. In other words, if you're coming home in Oakland or O'Hare in Chicago or LaGuardia, don't get to the airport 50 minutes before your flight. That could be, you can handle that at Will Rogers. So give yourself plenty of time. If you know what you're doing at Will Rogers, you can always make it. But when you're on foreign territory, give yourself plenty of time. The worst thing in the world is to miss a flight. So coming home, give yourself plenty of time.
It's good advice. I was flying out of Houston this past weekend and coming through, I was actually coming from out of the country, so coming through customs and immigration was about the longest line I've seen in years. It is that time of year. There you see Karen Carney right there. You guys, any travel tips?
Well, I'll be heading out tomorrow, so I agree with Barry. This is one of the most accessible and easy to get in and out of airports in the country. I am going to go a little extra early tomorrow, in addition to the earlier time that I'd leave, because it's Thanksgiving. I just think, with the heightened security and everything else, I'm just going to, I don't want to take any chances of missing the flight, like he says, and I don't want to stress about it. So I'll probably give myself a couple hours advance. So
we're seeing a little bit of changes at Will Rogers Airport. She mentioned that the terminal revisions that they have coming up or are planned would include an overlook deck in addition to just other enhancements. So Will Rogers is actually a pretty easy airport to fly in and out of.
One of the easiest, and that's another thing to follow up on what Barry said about there are very few airports that are easier to get in and out of than Will Rogers, so you're going to be coming into a different kind of a situation. Also, and Thanksgiving's an unusual travel season in that some people leave on Wednesday, some people leave on Thursday, but everybody comes back on Sunday. So your flight back that day, that airport, wherever you're coming from, is going to be its busiest day.
Don's exactly right. In fact, that's what Karen said. Sunday is their busiest and biggest day of the year. Now, one thing we learned last night, shifting to sports and something right in Barry's wheelhouse, is the Sooners are ranked number 3 in the college football playoff rankings. Our man Don Mecoy just happens to be wearing an OU tie. Barry, any surprises that the Sooners jumped from 7 to number 3?
Yeah, I was a little surprised because I thought Oklahoma might pass Notre Dame, but I really thought Michigan State would go up to 3. Instead, they're at 5 and Iowa at 4. So the committee did the Sooners an unbelievable favor or gift or whatever you want to call it. Not just putting them into the top 4, but putting so much separation between Oklahoma and Notre Dame, because that's who really OU is competing with. So if the way it looks now, if the Sooners can beat Oklahoma State, which is a big if, but if they do that, it looks like they're going to get into the playoff without having to worry too much about Notre Dame.
Bedlam is Saturday night, 7 o'clock. It's in Stillwater. Sooners and Cowboys. Looking at some file footage from previous years. Barry, this playoff scenario, if I read your column correctly, we could be looking at, if the Sooners win, the Sooners playing in the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that's one of the blessings of the newest rankings. Is everybody's just been worried about getting to number 4, just getting in. But if you get in at number 4, most likely the number 4 team will be going to the Orange Bowl, because the number 1 seed looks like it'll be Clemson or Alabama. They would probably prefer to play in the Orange Bowl. So 4 would go to the Orange Bowl and play there. But if you're at 2 or 3, that would put you in the Cotton Bowl. So the Sooners would much rather be in the Cotton Bowl. The fans would be 200 miles away instead of 1,800 miles away. You'd be playing in a stadium that's 2/3 crimson instead of 1/3 crimson. So that would be a major advantage for Oklahoma if they make the playoff, to be able to play in the Cotton Bowl instead of the Orange Bowl.
Barry, I've actually covered a bowl game with you back in the day. in South Beach. There's never anything wrong with covering action in Miami, at least from my opinion.
You've not spent a New Year's in Las Colinas, Dave. You haven't lived until it's been 44 degrees on New Year's Day in greater Dallas Fort Worth.
Well, in fact, this weekend Bedlam game will be kind of cold. And Don, you have a memory from back in the 80s of a pretty cold Bedlam game.
Well, you know, they were talking about that it could be pretty miserable on Saturday for this year's Bedlam game, but we know it won't be the worst weather we've ever seen for an OU-OSU game, right, Barry? The ice bowl can't be topped.
It's hard to imagine a worse scenario than 20-degree weather with freezing rain blowing sideways. You know, it's bad enough when freezing rain falls straight down and hits you on top of your head, but when it's going sideways, you literally can't get away from it, and that's what happened in '85. And somehow Oklahoma found a way to score 13 points that day and even kick 2 field goals. I have no idea how Tim Lasher did that, but anybody that lived through the Ice Bowl will never forget it. We had a bad weather game 2 years ago in Stillwater. It was about 20 degrees, snow everywhere, frigid, but at least you weren't getting hit in the face by frozen rain pellets.
Don, you were in the stands. Did you stay the entire game?
I stayed until the final whistle because I had to drive all the way back to Norman at the end of the game, which was another death-defying feat. But yeah, I always thought Switzer had one of the best lines when they asked him, "Is that the worst conditions you've ever played football in?" And he said, "That's the worst conditions I've ever been in." So it was awful.
Barry, we were talking about the Sooners, but what's on the line? What's the implications for the Cowboys on Saturday?
Well, I mean. Just depends. A lot of it depends on Friday. Baylor plays TCU on Friday. If TCU can upset Baylor, which they very well could, that makes Bedlam the absolute Big 12 title game. The winner is the outright Big 12 champ. The loser's not. So it could be a Big 12 championship for OSU. And if that happened, and a few things went right elsewhere, OSU could be back in the running for the 14 playoffs. Now, it's a long shot. They would need a lot of help. Oklahoma really doesn't need any help, being ranked number 3. OSU at 11 would need some help, but it's not astronomical help. So if Baylor can lose on Friday, it changes everything for OSU. But if Baylor does win, knocks OSU out of the Big 12 title hope and the playoff, it's still unbelievable bounty for Oklahoma State to be able to beat the Sooners and knock the Sooners out of the playoff. What would be better than that for a Cowboy fan who didn't get to win the title? So I think there's a lot on the line for OSU. If they win this game, they're 11-1. It matches the best season in Cowboy history. So this is not any kind of consolation game for Oklahoma State.
Barry, I just had a couple questions. One, which was, as a lifelong Big 12, Big 8 guy, why doesn't, or do you believe the conference gets national respect? And if not, why doesn't it? And then secondly, so you're saying K-State is out of the running for this this national title thing?
Well, the national title, yes. K-State is still in the thick. They're in the thick of the race for the Sunflower Cup. If they can beat Kansas on Saturday, then they win the state championship of Kansas, primarily because Wichita State dropped football 30 years ago, and Kansas has not gotten around to winning a game this year.
Barry, I just want you to know, if they do not win that game, I will not be here on Monday. So if they cannot beat Kansas, we're done.
Well, you know what? I actually think Kansas has an outside shot at them because Kansas is playing a little bit better. So,
thankfully, Barry, I've been following your picks about K-State this year, and frequently you have been wrong. So only on the
way back when I picked them to beat the Sooners. So for crying out loud, yeah. So flog me in the public marketplace.
You only missed it by 8 touchdowns.
Yeah. And that being the one game I got to witness this year. So thanks for that.
So you haven't seen K-State score yet this year?
Not in person.
Of course, Phil is a proud K-State alum, and for that matter, a Royals fan, and at least you can hang your hat on that. Phil, Don, any predictions for Bedlam game this week?
I think OU is more rounded, more physical, more athletic, deeper, stronger team.
If Baker Mayfield's good to go, I think OU's good to go.
And Barry, how much did the playoff committee consider Baker Mayfield when they were considering the Sooners?
It looks to me like they considered the fact that he was out in the second half against TCU because they didn't appear to hold a 1-point victory over TCU without Trevon Boykin. Didn't hold that against OU. And they also seem to indicate that they believe he'll be back, because you certainly don't rank Oklahoma third if you think they're playing without Baker Mayfield. So it looks to me like they gave Oklahoma the benefit of a couple of doubts there. And that's the way you got to emerge. That's the way you get third ahead of Iowa and Michigan State and Notre Dame. They sort of give you the benefit of the doubt over teams like that.
Berry Tramel, sports columnist for the Oklahoman. Barry, your thoughts on who will win on Saturday?
Well, I'm picking Oklahoma. They just played so much better than OSU. OSU, escaped with its life 3 or 4 times this year, which is to their credit, but Oklahoma's been more dominant. And at this point in the season, OU can run the ball and OSU can't. And that's really the difference. If Samaje Perine doesn't play, his ankle's bad, all of a sudden things change. But if Baker Mayfield and Samaje Perine are up there in Stillwater, I think it's going to be difficult for the Cowboys to win.
One last topic to get into here. We mentioned Thursday's editions of the Oklahoman will be a large edition. Be sure to go to your driveways and your newsstands to pick that up for all the stories and the circulars and all the shopping that is ahead of you. Guys, weekend stories. What can we expect in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman?
Well, we've got a lot of stories scheduled to come up over the weekend. One of the ones I think people might enjoy is we spent a lot of time with folks this week who are at Pie Junkie making a massive amount of pies. And
Pie Junking over in the Plaza District.
Over in the Plaza District. And so we spent a little time with them as they lovingly put together people's holiday traditional pie. And get into a little bit of the pie history.
Was this Adam Kemp?
Yep.
Did he sample, or I should say, how many pies did he sample?
I'm gonna say this. He went over there 3 separate times and returned on none of those occasions with any pie. So
in-depth reporting.
Yeah, we may have to send him back one more time.
Don, what's coming off the business desk this weekend?
Well, our energy team is taking a look at, we've had a lot of stories about the injection wells in Oklahoma because these energy companies are pumping just unimaginable amounts of water into the state, and there's been a link between that and all the earthquakes that we've been experiencing. And they're actually looking at the numbers. They managed to get some data from the Corporation Commission, and the numbers are jaw-dropping in some counties. In Alfalfa County,
as far as
how much water they produce when they drill these wells, they produce water in addition to oil and gas. The wells in northern Oklahoma produce huge amounts of water, and they have to dispose of it. They pump it back down into the planet. And in Alfalfa County last year, oil companies pumped over 1 billion gallons of water into that one county. And they seem to be having some earthquakes up there. So we're going to take a look at those numbers. They're pretty interesting.
Interesting stuff. Barry, what are you working on in the upcoming editions of the Oklahoman?
Well, we've got a situation for Friday. We're talking about the special teams nature of this series. The last 3 Bedlams have turned on a punt return. Everybody remembers Tyreek Hill's punt return last year for OSU, but OU got the edge the previous 2 years. Jalen Saunders returned the punt. So we're looking at the novel concept of punt returns dominating Bedlam. That's for Friday. And on Saturday, the home field disadvantage of Bedlam. The home teams don't rule Bedlam. Oklahoma State, and historically, has won more Bedlam games in Norman than they've won in Stillwater. So we're trying to figure that out.
Good stuff. All these stories and more in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman. One last thought here. Berry Tramel, when he travels on the road, blogs. Like a maniac, he blogs. I mean, just pumping out content, including food columns. Barry, what dish are you looking forward to most on Thanksgiving?
Probably my wife's broccoli and rice and cheese casserole. I only get it once a year, so that's probably number one. And I got a blessed gift just a few minutes ago. My mom died in April, and she made this concoction called Tramel pie. I don't have any idea how to make it. She never taught my wife to make it, and I thought, I'm never going to get another Tramel pie. But my niece called and said she's been experimenting and she thinks she can make trammel pie. She's bringing one tomorrow. And if she gets anything close to the real thing, it's going to be a glorious day.
Good stuff. Phil, favorite dish?
It would be my wife's family's southern cornbread dressing.
Sounds pretty good.
It's delicious.
All right, and Don?
Well, my wife makes garlic mashed potatoes with some other vegetables in it. I'm not even sure what all's in there, but I just know it's delicious, and I eat all of it, which is, I'm a big side dish guy on Thanksgiving because, frankly, turkey is way overrated. So I go for the other things.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time today, and best of luck. Happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, safe travels to you, Phil. I know you're headed out. And by the way, very good politically correct answers from all three of you.
I don't know. I think you might hear from the Turkey Producers Association.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'll be catching up with my parents.
Happy holidays, Barry.
And enjoying my mom's
You too,
meals.
guys.
All right, that'll do it. These stories and more in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman. Of course, plenty of coverage online at newsok.com. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.